Hello everybody, welcome back to Retro Tech HQ. Now in part 1 of our Commodore 64 restoration, we transformed our machine from this to this and then left it basking in the British sunshine to correct some colour inconsistencies. But then this happened. Luckily we were able to leave our Commodore 64 in the sun long enough to even out any odd colours, especially where there used to be stickers, and you'd need eyes like this guy to spot the difference. It really has come up great and looks like an almost new machine. But those of you that have watched part 1 will know that we've got some problems with the keyboard. Some keys work, some keys only work if you press them really hard, and some don't work at all. If you haven't seen part 1, I strongly recommend that you go back and check that out. I'll put a link in the description. And if you haven't done so yet, please take a moment to hit the subscribe button. Okay, with that said, the first thing we need to do is clean up some of the loose dirt, grime and fluff that our keyboard is completely caked in. It's still very manky and serves as a reminder of the condition our Commodore 64 was in before we started working on it. Next up, we're going to need to remove all of the keys, and to do that it's best to use a keycap puller. Now in the past I've tried to do this using my fingers and a small screwdriver. This isn't a good idea. Firstly, you'll end up with very sore fingers, and secondly there's a much higher chance of breaking something. Keycap pullers are cheap, so it's not worth the risk. And something that really surprised me was just how hard some of the keys were to remove. Some were stuck solid. I can only assume that a combination of hair mousse, Tizer and curly whirly crumbs makes for one hell of a glue. And let me know in the comments below if you remember Tizer, because you can even tell it's Tizer when your eyes are shut. And after that awful attempt at an 80s TV commercial, let's go ahead and remove the rest of these keys. And just as we thought we'd got rid of all the stickers, I found one more hidden underneath the shift key, an L, on its own with nothing else. Perhaps the previous owner was a fan of LL Cool J. And here's the keyboard with all the keys removed. It's pretty gross and there's more than a few critters stuck to it. What a way to go. But I thought it was worth getting a close-up shot for posterity's sake. And I've intentionally left the spacebar till last. It's the only key with a different length spring, so it needs to be kept separately. Okay, to take this apart further, there's two things we need to do. Firstly, we need to remove all of the small gold colour screws you can see in this shot. And secondly, we'll need to desolder these two connectors. To do that, I'm going to use this desoldering station. Now I love soldering, but I used to absolutely hate desoldering. Perhaps it was my technique, but I could never get on with either desoldering braid or those manual solder pumps. So I'd spend a lot longer desoldering than I would soldering, especially when changing a lot of components. So for me, having a proper desoldering station was a game changer and cost a lot less than I thought it would. And this shot demonstrates just how easy this tool makes desoldering. It's a case of heating it up, pressing it onto the contacts and pulling the trigger. But the eagle-eyed amongst you may have noticed that I was slightly clumsy in my enthusiasm and melted the plastic near the contacts. Oops, this won't affect the usage of this keyboard though. And with all the screws removed, we can separate the two halves of the keyboard and take a close look at our circuit board. This looks to be in excellent condition, but we'll go ahead and give it a clean with IPA anyway. Now for the more time-consuming part of this job. Under each key is one of these little plungers, and at the end of each plunger there's a black piece that bridges the contacts on the circuit board and subsequently registers a key press. My suspicion is that it's these little black contacts that have got dirty, hence why some keys work and some keys don't. This one's a good example. A bit of IPA and a cotton bud and you can see the muck coming off. But there's a lot of these little plungers, and for everyone's sanity I'm not expecting you to watch as I clean each and every one of them. So we'll skip forward to the end of this job.
One eternity later.
And we're done, and as you can see from the pile of dirty cotton buds, we got a lot of muck off our keyboard plungers. It was a time-consuming process, but hopefully our keyboard will work properly now. And with that said, we can finally start putting our keyboard back together. But before we do, I'm going to take this opportunity to give it a good scrub to make sure we've got rid of any remaining grime. That's so much better. It's becoming a keyboard that I don't actually mind touching, and like the rest of our Commodore 64, this has come up really clean. And at this stage we can start putting our keyboard back together. Cue the turbo assembly montage. Okay, now that our keyboard is mostly back together, we've got one last job to do before we can test whether it works properly, and that's to clean up each individual key. But as you can see, some of these keys are very grubby and are going to need some serious scrubbing. Luckily for us, Derek is available. He's just got back from a week in LA where he attended this year's Baywatch conference. So how was it, Derek?
Yeah, bro. It was totally awesome. I met Hoff and Pamela Anderson is still a hottie. Woohoo, yeah, come get some. Hold up. You said this would be full of beer. Where's the beer?
And yeah, that just happened. So anyway, moving on, I'm not going to make you watch me scrub every single key, so let's jump ahead to the fully assembled keyboard. Wow, what a difference. It's come up mint, and there's no sign of any significant wear and tear. I think we've been really lucky with this machine. Under all that dirt and grime was a really tidy Commodore 64, and prior to giving this keyboard a thorough clean, I hadn't even noticed all of the symbols on the front of the keys. I've still got no idea what most of them do, but at least we can see them now. And now for the moment of truth. Let's find out if it works. First up, let's see if the shift and run stop combo works. Okay, that works fine. Let's move on to some other keys. Happy days, it works and feels great with only a light press of each key needed to trigger a key press, a stark contrast to how this keyboard performed in part 1 of this project. And so that brings us to the end of part 2. In part 3 we'll get our Commodore 64 back together for its big reveal, and we'll also play some games. And this is where I'd like to hear from you in the comments below. Did you have a Commodore 64 and do you still have it? And what games are your favourites? Let me know and I'll try and include some in part 3. Thanks for watching, please like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.
And I'll see you next time as well.